We bring in the one and only Ray Ferraro, one of the best mustaches back in the day with Hartford. What's going on, Ray?
That was a long time ago.
Hey, did you see my post yesterday? I had you in the duster.
Yeah, I noticed. If you look at that Whalers team, we had a pretty good collection. There were Joel Quenneville had a good one. Dave Tippett had one. Dave Babbage, maybe All-Star Hall of Fame mustache.
There, yeah.
John Anderson. We had some good ones. It was the style. Like you guys were, I don't know, were you guys even born yet? Like, I don't know. Like it was style. Like we thought we were.
I don't know about Nick, but
yeah, good point. You're not that young, Dave. Come on.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray.
I love it, Ray. Thank you so much for dropping by. We're just talking about some news that we're hearing on Matthew Knies. Sounds like a knee issue day to day, which again, I think you always fear for the worst when you see somebody leave the lineup the way he did in that game. But the evolution of Matthew Knies has been so amazing. And he's really gelling with the big boys there in the top line too, isn't he?
Well, for sure he is. But I mean, when you draft a guy and he's got this toolbox that Knies has, and he's got the size to go with it, it's hard to be patient because you think that I think those bigger guys get looked at like they can jump in quicker than and compete because of the strength thing and the way that the game is played. Except some guys just can. Like some of the big guys, they take time. Some of the big guys with lots of skill, it doesn't mesh for them early in their career. Yet I look at Matthew Knies. I do a lot of Ranger games, and I know he's different, but Will Cooley is the same. Like these are big, strong guys they get around the ice. They got good hands. They can score. Cooley hasn't had much of a chance, say, to play with the level of player that Knies has, but he's going to be able to do it. And like teams die for these players. Like they can't wait to get them in. And so they've got a complete player in Knies, and now you deal with the injuries, you deal with the youth, maybe you're going to have some ups and downs, but man, that kid can play.
Yeah, without question, and he's going to get a nice little paycheck at the end of this too, because his contract is up. He'll get a nice little.
Never
raise.
hurts.
Nope. Yeah, exactly. What did you make? Did you see the tilt between Olivier and Reaves last night? And just your thoughts on that one, but also Austin Matthews' comments afterwards, saying that he thought the crowd could have been a little more hyped after that. It hyped the bench up, but it would have been nice to see the crowd getting more involved.
Well, the fight, I mean, like that's a old school heavyweight bout, right? And when I played, like those guys, there would be like one a game or so that the big boys would get at it, and you'd look at it, and the ferocity of the fight is incredible to watch when you're in the building. Like those guys, when at their size, at their weight, when they hit, man, they hit. And as for I utmost respect for, like, I can't even imagine being able to stand in there to take and give. And we had a tough guy in LA, Matt Johnson, and Moose was an amazing guy. And he tells me one time that, he had to take a couple to get into position. I'm like, take a couple what? And he's like, no, you gotta take one to kind of get and I was like, that's a world like most of us have no idea about, right? And so as for the building, I mean, like, isn't that kind of that kind of been the thing there for kind of, I'll say forever, but for a long time? It's like the people that would be most enthused about something like that, they're not there. They're not, so they're certainly not sitting in the lower bowl. That's for sure. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I totally get it. Like I saw it. I had the game on delay. I was a little late getting to it. And when I got there, it was the end of the fight. I'd kind of fast forwarded through when they were out of gas, and people were saying, oh, what a heavyweight tilt. And I didn't see it as that. And then I rewound it and I was like, oh my God. Like, of course, the energy on the ice is really quite incredible.
Was going to ask you, I want to lean on you as a former player. Was that just your prototypical classic trap game, or do you think there were deeper issues?
Okay, so you guys in Toronto or in Montreal or in Boston, everything's in a vacuum, right? Like these are the games you see over and over and over, or the team you see over and over. So when things are good, it's amazing. When it's lousy, like last night, could it be more? I'm telling you, this is the same everywhere. One of the great things I get, I just love it of my job, is that I see all these different teams. I've done games with, I think, 22 teams so far this year. And so I get to see ups and downs all over the place. And so the answer, Nick, is like, it's one night. It's could be a trap game, sure. But like some nights you just don't have it. And they could have had a couple early. Maybe that changes the context of the game. But every team goes through a night where you're like, that was terrible. And there's so many games, it's impossible. Like the biggest fallacy is listening to coaches and players say, we need to play a 60-minute game. We need to be consistent night to night. There's no way to do it. The other teams are allowed to try. So like if you play a complete game, you might have control of it for 35 minutes and 15 minutes might be dead flat. And even nothing happening. In 10 minutes, they might get. But if you impose your will longer, that's a controlled game. The consistency night to night is just, it's an impossibility with 80 games, right? You're going to have nights that just suck. And I guess that's the result they got last night.
Yeah, that wasn't a top-notch performance.
No.
Overall. They weren't completely out of it, but once those two goals back-to-back happened between JVR and Fantilli's second, it was just, they looked defeated.
Yeah, finished. It was, and those are the nights like maybe you just don't have it to dig back. Right? Like, so LA's had an amazing season. 2 home games ago, they get pancaked. It's 5-1. They look terrible. And then last night they beat Florida. And so like, it's the same team. It's the same guys. It's just 2 days later. And I think that's the ups and downs of the long season.
Wanted to ask you as well, Ray, about Morgan Rielly. Again, it was a tough outing for him. Do you think this is just classic Toronto? Because it just seems like every year this market needs like a whipping boy on the blue line. Or do you think the Maple Leafs have a Morgan Rielly problem right now?
I would say expectation creates a problem for anybody. When somebody else expects something from you, and if you don't deliver it to the level that they're expecting, I'm not even talking just in sport, but if you don't deliver to the expectation that they have, then there's going to be angst, right? Also, when a player's in the same place for a long period of time, I think it's more common to see what the player isn't as opposed to what he is. And so I think there's a hope and an expectation that Rielly can play to that. What did he have in that big year? He had like 50 assists or something, right? And, and I just don't think that's what Morgan is. I think at the expectation that the team or the fans, maybe the team, I don't know, that they would like from him. I just don't know that he's a producer at that level. He's never had a great shot. So on the power play, that's a weapon that the Leafs don't have. So I think that sometimes leads them into trying to pass the puck into the net, as opposed to, as skilled as the Oilers are, every so often it goes back to Bouchard and he just hammers one. And whether it hits the net or hits the boards, now everybody's got to react. And I think part of that is the angst, I'll use again, about Rielly, is that he cannot create in the way that maybe some people wish he could.
Yeah. He's had 2 50-plus assist seasons in his career, and those are the only 2 seasons where he actually had double digits in goals as well. 20 the one season, and then 10 the rest of them.
Well, okay, Dave, that's a really good set of stats, because most of us look at the high water mark and think that should be the regular. When there's a reason players have career years. I scored 40 goals twice. I was not a 40 goal scorer, but I did it twice.
Right.
If you expected 27 goals from me, you were probably pretty happy. If you were looking for 40, there were 16 years you weren't very happy. And so I think that's the same for Morgan. He had those 2 huge years, and I don't think that's, certainly at this stage of his career, I just don't think that's what he is. And he's a good player, but if you're not going to produce at that level, then everything else has to become more and more airtight. And I think that's where maybe the frustration comes from fans watching them.
Yeah.
Dave?
Looking at the group, and last night, notwithstanding,
Right.
that, but if there's an area or two that you think they should improve on, looking up and down this roster, is there one that comes out at you more than another?
Well, I mean, the second center has been
Right.
third center rather, that center position, but like depending on how you want to rank people. But I mean, that's an area of need, perhaps. I do think they're in a position, when I look around the league, like how many teams are certainly in the East are better than them, like that you can say clearly are better than them. This is not a year to keep, like, to wait. I think in the past,
right,
they have spent extensively with future capital, like with draft picks and maybe young players that it didn't work out. And some of them, it looked like a reach at that time even, right? Like you're like, geez, that's an expensive bet on a team that's kind of in the middle of it. This year, they're near the top of it in the East. And so you can always use another defenseman. You always can. You can always use another forward. If there's a strong centerman to be had, like a physically strong guy, I think that stands out a little bit for me, because you're going to get into a series where you're going to need it. It's going to be a slog through the mud, and you're going to need it. And it's a reason somebody like Sam Bennett is a good playoff player. And maybe he's not an 80-game producer for you, but you get into those 7 games in 13 days against the same player, because it's not just the same team, right? Like, you got to remember, when you're in a playoff series, the matches generally are head to head for 2 weeks. Yeah. And if you're playing a guy that's a miserable SOB, then that's a long 2 weeks. And I do think in the style that they're trying to play, something like that is a bid. Where do you find them? Like, teams aren't giving you that, right? Like I do. And Dave, you do this more so like all the time, but like when people say, oh, they got to do something, and yeah, sure, they got to do something, but somebody's got to be willing to trade with you. Like, I live out in Vancouver.
Exactly.
If I hear one more time, they have to get something done. I think they're aware of that. However, the other side needs to be involved too, right? Like, you can't make a trade if the other team says, I'll give you a bag of peanuts. Or if they're like, we're not ready for it right now. We're going to wait and see. Like, I do feel like teams would like to get settled early. I don't know what you're hearing, but that 4 Nations break to me seems like the first trade deadline. That teams would love to get their guy or guys in advance of the break, so the player can get in and get sort of assimilated into a new city and get his family in there and try and figure out which way is north. Never mind the hockey, but like just try to get their life settled. And then, of course, the real deadline's 3 weeks later.
Yeah, it's such a rare time because you've got that break. So if you're not in 4 Nations, you've got time to get acclimated to, your new situation, which is talking to people around the league and managers and whatnot. Like that's what they're viewing. I think that those 10 days leading up to that break is going to be interesting.
A lot of people waiting, right? Like, we're kind of in that mode now where the games are the games and they're all important, but everybody's kind of like got their fingernails on trying to grab on to something. Like, is there a deal to be made? Is it this week? Is it next week? What's our team doing? And it's outside of the players living the stress of it. It's an interesting time of year to follow.
Boys, I mean, the problem with this is that every team thinks they still have a shot. The 3-point league,
Sure.
you got 17 teams in the mix. Like, if you're talking sellers right now, Chicago, San Jose, the Buffalo Sabres, because that's their role every season. So that's my wonder with the trade market. But Ray, I wanted to ask you about Mitch Marner, on pace for a career year, and we could tie this into the tournament you just talked about, the Four Nations. Does it matter at all? I'm just from an outsider's perspective, the output, what Mitch Marner does in that tournament for sort of, how people view the player right now.
No, I don't think so. It's almost like if it, and I'll compare it to like at the draft. So all these rankings come out and some kid has a fabulous or lousy World Junior tournament. So how can those 5 or 7 games tell you everything or change your complete view of a player if you've watched him 75 times?
We'll try to get Ray back on the line here to break down Mitch Marner, obviously the Four Nations and that moving forward, but that conversation will be very,
am I back? Sorry.
Yeah, we got you back.
Yeah, my Cammy called. So
all good. Go ahead.
And so I don't know if I should just let the call ring or hang up. So I hung up, and apparently that hangs everything up. So, technology escaping me again. Shocker.
So I was
and that door may open pretty soon. So, the thing with Marner, and I was comparing it to the junior kids. Look, he's had a fabulous year. He's one of the great creators in the game. And if he goes to the Four Nations and stinks, I don't see how that matters to any of the other teams. It wouldn't matter to me. If I had a number that I could sign Mitch Marner to and he's minus 12 in the tournament, I don't care. I'm like, I want the creator. I'm not worried about a weak tournament, mainly because the guys he's playing with, he's not going to be playing with anyway.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And Ray, you could be in the doghouse after this interview. Don't blame it on us. Okay.
Is that for the Toronto stuff or home?
No, for your wife.
Oh no,
I think home front.
I've done way worse stupid things than that. That's for sure. I can tell you that.
Thank you so much for your time today. I know you got a busy slate. Appreciate it.
Awesome. You guys have a great day. Good to see you.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Roseau. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.